How many of you compare yourself with other people? For example, who here would be honest enough to admit spending time on Instagram, Facebook, or other social media platforms to see what other people are up to? Please raise your hands if you do. Okay. Okay, so it's some sort of percentage of you. That stereotype about Asians being good at math is not always right. The truth is, we all compare ourselves with other people all the time. We compare our bodies, our brains, and our bank balances. And other people compare us whether we like it or not. It starts the moment we are born. You have proud relatives looking at babies and say, "Oh, he's so cute." Or in my case, he's a big boy for 6 months. And so it begins. You know, I once read that comparison is the thief of joy. Today, everything you hear about comparison is negative. You've been taught to see comparison as something that causes anxiety, stress, high self-doubt. And the pandemic hasn't helped the situation either. But what if the stigma about comparison is because we haven't been taught the positive side of comparison, especially in the digital space? I believe comparison can be a giver of great things, valuable things like personal growth, success, and confidence. But as you're about to hear, it took me a long time to discover that. From my thick, deep Texas accent, you already probably know that I was not born in the United States. I grew up the younger of two kids in a conservative middle-class family living in the southern part of India. And at a young age, I developed this inferiority complex that I wasn't good enough. I constantly kept comparing myself with other overachievers around me. And this led to horrible feelings of inadequacy, stress, anxiety, and high self-doubt. So I turned to food as my coping mechanism. And for much of my life, I looked nothing like the skinny Asian guy you see standing before you today. I bottled up my feelings for so long, and then during my second year of my undergrad, they came spilling out. I still remember the moment vividly. My chest started hurting, and the pain was increasing minute by minute. I started gasping for breath. My hand shook, my entire body trembled. I was sweating profusely. Uncontrollable tears poured from my eyes. And this went on for the next 2 hours. And looking back on it, I realized that this was a moment I'd hit rock bottom. If this were the movies, it would be the moment where my faithful dog would die or would run away from me because I'm eating all the food. Eating all the food. And I realized that when you live a life based on other people's opinions, you never feel good enough. The more you try, the tougher it gets. So on that day, I made a decision that I matter. I decided that if I'm going to be compared to other people, it's going to be on my own terms. So I started to turn my life around. And I got fascinated with the positive side of comparison. I learned researchers refer to 2 types of comparison. You have upward comparison, that is comparing yourself with people who you think are doing better than you. And then you have downward comparison, that is comparing yourself with people who you think are doing worse than you. So say, for example, you want to get fit through running. Upward comparison would be with someone who could run a marathon and then go night clubbing afterwards. Downward comparison would be with someone who gets out of breath when they try to bend down to run a bat. Of course, downward comparison feels good at that moment, but it doesn't really help you grow or get better for the future. In contrast, upward comparison can push you out of your comfort zone. It can make you try something new. It can help you grow. And looking back on it, I realized that there's 3 steps to using positive comparison to fuel your growth, and I call it the 3 R's. They stand for research, recognize, research, and replace. The first set of steps is to recognize your fears and insecurities. In fact, write them down. In this digital age, comparison is happening younger than before. More teens are using social media to compare themselves with others. In fact, research has found that 7 in 10 American teens use TikTok. Even online and offline games have enabled chat features to increase social interaction. And that is the extent to which the digital space has impacted the youth. Everyone seems to have an opinion about you these days, especially on the internet. It's crazy. You see all these young and old people hiding behind their keyboards and saying all sorts of things. Like, have you ever read a comment on Facebook and felt like slapping the person through your phone? Well, I remember one time finding myself reading this. Writing your thoughts down helps to take some of the emotions out of it. The trouble with an emotional reaction is it often leads to more bad feelings. And in my case, it led to the fridge for a pint of ice cream. Now, when I had the trigger event during my second year of my undergrad, I started to write down all my fears and insecurities. And then I went down the list and decided to do something about each one of them. And when I say fears, it may look something like this for you. Fear of being ignored, fear of public speaking, fear of being judged, fear of failure, fear of fear itself. And in terms of insecurities, you may be constantly comparing yourself with other people around you. Your self-worth is driven by your latest results. You cannot celebrate other people's success because it makes you feel angry and jealous. And if you just might think you might have the longest list of fears than anyone in this room today, I bet you won't be alone. You shouldn't let your emotions be the driver of your actions. You need to become the watcher of your actions. You don't become your false identity. Once I started recognizing these patterns and listing them down, my entire life changed. Somehow just getting the thoughts out of my head onto the paper made a huge difference. It allows you to see firsthand what you're good at and what you aren't good at. And then you can focus on the things you want to get better at. That's why the first set of steps is to recognize your fears and insecurities. Write them down. The second step is research. You need to research the different strategies people use to overcome their fears and insecurities. What are they doing that you are not doing? For example, one of the biggest fears growing up for me was the fear of being ignored. So I decided to change this. I don't mean by getting a crazy haircut or something. But at the age of 23, I decided to start a blog to build my name and brand. That was about 13 years ago. Yep, I'm old. After writing 10 blog posts, I got on a total of 5 views. 5 views. I put in so much effort to write these blog posts, and the traffic to them was like the quietest road in the quietest town in America. I'd be lying if I say I wasn't dejected. It was tremendously demoralizing. And all these negative emotions started coming up, as you might expect. Thoughts like, you're not good enough. You're not talented. That's why people do not want to hear what you say. That's why blogs do not work. And I need to blog about that, and so on, right? But after seeing how other people do blog posts, I realized my approach was all wrong. My mental focus was on the amount of traffic, the number of followers, and the number of likes. But it was not on the quality of the content I was sharing. It is embarrassing to admit that I'll be like refreshing my blog post every few minutes to see whether I got an extra like. I bet none of you in this room have done anything silly like that before, right? In fact, research has found that not getting enough likes can actually increase anxiety and depression. It's a real thing. But the point is, as young kids and parents of young kids, we need to start using upward comparison to research what other kids are doing that is making them successful in different areas of their lives. Most importantly, we need to start replacing some of the habits and practices based on the research to get you going. That's why the third and final step is to replace some of your habits. So once I started analyzing my blog posts, I realized I had to figure out who my ideal audience was. I needed to focus on their pain points and share content based on that. I also realized that I need to start writing for different publications to help people get to know me. By doing those changes and many more since, I built my brand. I've published over 80 plus articles. I have thousands of followers across social media platforms. And all this happened because instead of giving up on blogging, I replaced some of my strategies with better ones. Remember, be compassionate with yourself, especially when you're trying something new and it doesn't work out for you. Because it's all about picking yourself up and continuing the journey. There's no doubt that the COVID crisis has accelerated our life into a more digital way. And we live in a world where it's so easy to compare and be compared. We need to find a healthy way to embrace this online comparison crazy world. And upward comparison can help you do that. Use it for your own benefit and on your own terms. So when you see someone getting the results you want, recognize the fact. Research what they're doing and be brave enough to replace some of your habits with better ones. You'll move closer to the person you want to be, and you'll enjoy the journey so much more. It's true that at its worst, comparison can be a thief of joy. But at its best, it could give you the ideas and the inspiration you need to have a great life. In the end, how you decide to use it is up to you. Remember, you're uniquely exceptional, entirely sophisticated, a rare breed. Don't apologize for who you are. Thank you.